Hey guys, really excited for this one today. Been exploring human formation, and really what we did was we looked back and we saw 20 different lessons, life lessons that weren't necessarily theological lessons, but really changed the way that we lived our lives as human beings, and in this spirit of just growing in our understanding of the human person and living out really our call to be human formators here at Metanoia Catholic. We're excited to share these 10 in this first episode, the first 10 of 20 that will continue on in next week's podcast.
Yeah, so stick around.
All right. Cheers, everyone. Welcome back. I felt like that mug was that was a powerful cheers there.
Yeah.
Much more, felt more powerful here. Take a little sip. Good morning.
Ooh.
Good afternoon. Erin, your hair looks great today.
Thank you.
You're wearing lovely green.
I'm blending into the background.
You are. Very
like my green
camouflage of
screen.
you. I know.
My arms are just floating here.
Every time she looks at these things, she's just like, why can't you see me? And it's like, you pick your wardrobe blends in with our background.
I guess so. I just like these colors, so
It's okay. But we're not here to talk wardrobe today or hair tips, even though, babe, you could give them. We're here to talk a little bit or continue the conversation on human formation, those 4 different types of formations. And that may sound dry to you. It is not. Trust me, folks, it is not. This is really what Archbishop Fulton Sheen would talk about, is like the new horizon for evangelization. John Paul II dedicated the beginning of his pontificate to the theology of the body, which is really understanding what it means to be human and really giving us some guidelines on how we can start to live in a way that's operative and in line with God's design for human thriving. So I find this stuff very fascinating. If you're a coach, tune into this, because that's what our business is as coaches, helping people to thrive where they are, become who they are, as John Paul II would say.
Yeah, using that blueprint.
Yes.
To help people thrive,
Yes.
right? Like if you're going to help a machine work well, you need a blueprint. You need some type of manual to see, okay, this is the best way for this thing to work.
Yeah.
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 And we have manuals too. The Lord created us with a design.
Yes. And not only does that design come with kind of an understanding of just how we live and how we operate, but also gives us an idea of what our ultimate end is as well, which is what John Paul II unpacks so well. So when we enter into that Catholic anthropology, that's what we're looking at. What is God's design for the human person? And then based on that, how do we live our lives in a way that brings about true happiness, true beatitude?
It's a true life hack.
Yeah.
It's it totally helps you avoid aimlessness and purposelessness.
Purposelessness, which is a big problem today. There is a real crisis of purpose and crisis of meaning. There's increasing depression levels, increasing anxiety levels, and these really fall in addiction levels. These really fall in line with Viktor Frankl's neurotic triad. Where he would talk about people that were struggling with just a lack of purpose, a lack of meaning. They're going to default to being angry or depressed or prone to addiction. And so the world that we live in, but that is not there for us to despair. God gives the church what it needs when she needs it. And so we see with these beautiful revelations of St. John Paul II and Archbishop Fulton Sheen, who is on his way, right? That the time is now for human formation, really understanding, starting not at the spiritual, starting at the human, going inner, contemplating that imago Dei, who we are created in the image and likeness of God. And in doing so, and not just ending in the ego and ending at navel gazing, but coming to understand who God is and why we want to be in relationship with him in the first place.
Yeah. There's a great interview we listened to. Dr. Peter, I'm going to say his last name.
Malinowski. I'll help you. Dr. Peter Malinowski.
Great interview. And we are going
on. It was on the Fulton Sheen
Institute
podcast, which just discovered that late to the game. That looks awesome. Yeah. By the way, check it out.
We're gonna link it below here.
We will.
So you guys can go listen to it, because he does give a working definition of human formation, which I thought was super helpful because you really can't find an actual definition of it.
Yeah, he's poured through the resources, and we've been doing it ourselves. Pastores Dabo Vobis has some mention in it from John Paul II back in 1992, and then there's the is it the for priestly formation? I can't remember what the book is, but there's a new edition that's coming out. We may or may not have gotten a sneak peek at that, but there is a discussion of what human formation is, but still, it's like we're in a bit of a discovery phase, it seems, right now as a church, but we're standing on really that Catholic anthropology that John Paul II has unpacked for us so well, which he stands on the shoulders of, St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine. So we're seeing this beautiful flowering that continues to happen as we just come to understand just the ever unfolding mystery of creation. It's beautiful.
So really what we're going to talk about today is areas of human formation that Matt and I have gone through the last 20 years, like 20 things I wish I could have told my 20-year-old self.
Yes.
Because I am 40 this year. So that's 20 years ago. That blows my mind.
And you're more beautiful today, babe, than you were
when
we first got married.
And so
Wink.
we're going to say 20 things we wish we could tell our 20-year-old self.
Yes, I got 10. Erin's got 10.
Yes.
She might even have some bonus ones in there, but.
And here's what, like, we're talking about human formation. We're talking about all the different types of formation. And here's one thing we want you guys to walk away with from today. Everything that we're going to share with you are aspects of human formation.
On a very practical kind of level.
Yes.
Some lessons and some skills that we wish we would have had back then.
Right. We really would, because we weren't lacking in spiritual or intellectual formation. Like, I was at Steubenville, I was like probably being taught by one of the, like, all of the greatest minds, right? The theological minds. And I would say in the country at that time, you know, it was like, that was really the theological, intellectual
but
Catholic
the stuff
peak.
But the stuff that we're sharing here on the human formation side, it wasn't like we went to a school or we sat down at somebody's feet and they were able to unpack a lot of these lessons together, which is really what we're seeking to do through the Metanoia Catholic Academy and our Catholic Coaching Foundations course, is really to have a place where we can really have some consolidated human formation programs that are there, developing some skills that really equip you to enter deeper into the spiritual formation aspects of it. I'm going through my spiritual direction certification over at Divine Mercy University, which is really about how do you accompany somebody really in their spiritual journey, in their relationship with Jesus. I can tell you this, I find myself kind of ping-ponging back and forth with spiritual direction calls with doing some human formation where it's lacking here. Not so that we end there, but ultimately so that it creates a space for really the person to move forward in freedom into that deeper relationship with Jesus.
But
so they complement one another very well.
If you weren't able to work in the human formation realm, what would happen?
There's a tendency, I think, to over-spiritualize things and kind of take more of an angelic approach to the person rather than a real human approach to the person, which I think Divine Mercy University is actually doing very well. It's used to be the Institute of Psychological Sciences, so they really have a strong kind of psychological basis here. We've got the meta model, Catholic meta model of the human person book on the shelf up there, which is drawing from all of those philosophy, psychology, theology backgrounds to really get a firm understanding, a Catholic understanding of who the human person is. Because we have to start there.
Have to.
Yeah.
You have to. And this is why I wish we had these skills.
Indeed.
I think I would have been able to absorb the information, the intellectual, the spiritual formation, the apostolic formation even more if I actually had these skills. So
we feel like we've discovered something here and we've got something to share, but we know that we're not the only ones that are out there that are discovering this. But this is the next wave of evangelization, folks. It's in the realm of human formation. And
face to face.
It's human to human, right? Mm-hmm. So even as, like, this is not necessarily fully human to human, right? Because I wish I could see kind of responses and be able to understand who I'm talking to with this. And so please comment below, like, subscribe here too. because we're going to continue to talk about this, and we really want to be a platform that really that shares what's going on, more about this movement of human formation. But let's get into what you're going to say, Aaron.
Two things I want to say. The quote by Saint Mother Teresa, and she was like, sometimes you're the only Bible somebody reads. Like, if we're talking about even evangelization, like, that is true. Like, sometimes the only person who is going to get in the way of you passing on this truth, this knowledge, this theological formation to somebody else could be you, and this lack of human formation.
And if you jump right to spiritual, you might forget that there's a human and not an angel standing in front of you.
And I'm going to butcher this quote, but it's another one by G.K. Chesterton where they talk about, what is it, like the biggest problem to the Catholic Church are Catholics or something?
Yeah.
Biggest problem to the growth of the Catholic Church are Catholics?
I know. Peter Kreeft, I think, pulls that one out of his pocket now.
Yes, it's true. So we need to like know how to communicate and be kind and actually own our own things. Okay, so here we go.
Let's ping pong back and forth. All right. You want to go first?
Yes. And I'm going to base this one off of, it was theological. So it was intellectual formation. I remember learning this. I was like, okay, so the human soul is made up of our intellect and our will.
So is that your first tidbit?
I'm going to add to it.
All right.
The human soul is made up of our intellect and our will. Our intellect is what we think, like our thoughts, right? And then our will is what we choose. And the goal of the intellect is to know truth, objective truth, to know universal truth. And the goal of the will is to choose the good, choose the greatest good. The one thing that I learned in human formation, I would say, is it's not only like a nice thought that we have an intellect and a will, but they are spiritual powers of the soul. And I always think of Uncle Ben from
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. It's like, with great power comes great responsibility. So it's not even just like, no, you just have these powers and the Lord just like uses you as a puppet, right? Like, and gives you grace and you just dance around and like do like think good things and do good things. You have to cooperate with him. And this is a great responsibility. Great responsibility. In fact, it's a much higher responsibility, I think, for Catholics.
So what is your first tip? Is that your first tip? Give me a number one.
My number one is, this is a great responsibility. These spiritual powers of our soul are not something that we just passively receive. We need to cooperate with God on them.
Custodians of them. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. So we are custodians of the spiritual powers of the soul. That's number one. Number two, my turn?
Yes.
All right. Not that giving is better than receiving, but becoming a gift begins with receiving. Okay? Not that giving is better than receiving, which kind of always you hear around Christmas time. All right. I think there's truth in that. But more so, what's profound to me is that becoming a gift, that resonates with me so much more, is starts with receiving. I remember sitting down and my first time going to the Theology of the Body Institute in the immersion course. And I was just like, I was on fire for TOB. It had really been a watershed moment for me in my own personal prayer life, where I had kind of started to own my Catholic faith when I was a sophomore in college. And so here I was, right after my first combat deployment, and I'm at Theology of the Body Institute, and I'm raring to go because I just want to learn how to share this gift, share this truth with so many other people. And I remember Christopher West saying, the first thing, you may want to scribble down your notes like crazy. And approach this as if, I can't wait to scatter the seed that I'm collecting, but wait for that seed to germinate. Let it land. I invite you into a Marian posture before you go Petrine, right? Marian, let it be done according to his will, versus going Petrine, spread the gospel, proclaim it to all the nations. And so that really became a model for me. And it goes along with that, you can't give what you don't have. But for some reason, it just landed differently with me, that when I'm in that mode of learning to be very present and be very conscious of when I am just taking in information on an intellectual level versus meditating on it, contemplating it, letting it germinate in my heart. Let it become a tree that brings forth fruit 10, 30, 100-fold, right? Then I have infinite amounts of seed to give to somebody versus somebody just hands me a pile of seeds. I say, these seeds are very valuable, and chuck them into the soil, but then I'm left with nothing, right? Because it's never actually taken root in me.
Makes me think of that saying, you don't know until you are. You know, so often we go, I know this stuff. I know this intellectually. It's like, well, has it changed you? Until you've actually changed, you don't know, actually. You don't fully know.
Yeah.
Because knowledge in the intellect is supposed to lead to your behaviors. It's supposed to lead to your choices and what you're choosing. And so, yeah, it's supposed to change you. Okay.
Number 3. You got it, Aaron.
Thoughts are distinct from facts, no matter how true they feel, no matter how many universal words you use, like this always happens and never and literally and so, and it's so very true, but it's not. It makes me think of what's the scene from, I always laugh at this and I always think of it, Inside Out, that movie, the Pixar movie, and it's the little,
Which color are they? What color
no,
are they?
it's her, like her friend, her little, like the guy with the nose.
Oh, Bing Bong?
Bing Bong, yes. They're on the train. This whole movie is like they're inside a little girl's mind. And they're on a train and like they knock over something and it's like facts and opinions. And they just both put them back together. He's like, that's okay. We get them mixed up all the time anyway. And I'm like, okay, that was a very long setup for this. But that is true. We get these things mixed up all of the time. And so like to just pause and critically think and to say, is that true? Is it a universal truth? One of my favorite questions to ask, and I know I've given this to you guys a lot before, but is that true 100% of the time? Now what I do is I pause, especially when I feel something is very, very true. It's a little hard to pause in the moment, but it's also really helpful just to journal on it later.
She's gotten a lot better at.
Yeah, and just to say like, is that 100% true all of the time? Like, are there no holes in it? So yeah. That's my...
I've actually learned to pause and create space for your pause.
Good.
Everybody wins.
All right,
Everybody
your
wins.
turn.
Number 4. Okay. This was massive for me in terms of moving past all kinds of self-shame and self-loathing that was hidden below the surface. My desires at their core are good. My desires at their core are good. And this was the main metanoia moment for me when I first heard the theology of the body, because I had gotten to a place, particularly with my struggles with pornography and chastity, sins against chastity, that I started to see my desires, specifically my sexual desires, as shameful and corrupt at their core. And so how did this manifest in me? It manifested in very self-righteous opinions towards other people, very legalistic approaches to chastity. But also when I was praying, my prayer was, Lord, take my sexual desires away from me, because all they do is get me into trouble. Not knowing that when these desires, like all desires, when they're brought to the divine physician, the divine redeemer, to be redeemed, to be divinized, to be reoriented towards that which will truly satisfy, suddenly that desire is no longer something you will ever ask God to take away from you, but rather just perfect it and purify it, because, boom, it becomes your very fuel for sanctity.
Yeah.
Oof, love it. So your desires at their core are good, right? And I will take that. I would say prove me wrong. Right? Can we desire things that are objectively evil? Right? Say, for example, can we desire fornication?
So there's like no confusion.
Okay?
Right.
Can we desire pornography? Right? Can we desire overindulgence in alcohol? We can, but when we really look to what we're seeking through that immoral object, right, will find that there is a pure intention somewhere in there, something that we're seeking. Maybe it's rest, maybe it's peace, maybe it's delight or joy or pleasure, but we're going about it in a very disordered way that will never lead to the end that we're seeking.
Hence
Welcome to the
addictions.
life of sin. Welcome to the life of sin. Welcome to the life of our fallenness and what concupiscence has done, clouding our intellect and distorting our will and inclining us towards sin. Excuse me. So that was my big one. My desires at their core are good.
Yeah.
Much more merciful towards myself, much more merciful towards other people.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah. That's a good one. And a lot of people need to hear that.
Praise the Lord.
What number are we on? 5?
We're on 5. Go for it, babe.
Okay, I'm going to blend these two because I have two like right after one another. But that beliefs are optional. I've said thoughts are optional, but there's a lot of unconscious thoughts that kind of come like just throughout our mind. And I want to actually distinguish this. A belief is a thought you keep on thinking. It's a thought that you are continuing to will, right? That's a thought. But it's a thought that we're continuing to will. So that is what a belief is. There are a lot of beliefs that we want to hang on to, and then there's a lot that we don't want to hang on to. And a lot of those ones that we don't want to hang on to are lies that the enemy... Now, the enemy knows that the mind is the spiritual battle. And he cannot just go, here, like, believe this, like and push it into your head.
Suddenly I believe it against my will.
Yes, no. You need to consent to the lies that he has presented to you. You have to consent to it. And in the same
again
thing...
and again and again.
You have to consent to a belief. So from that same principle, beliefs are also optional. You can choose to stop believing them. Now, that doesn't mean you wake up, you go to bed and go, I'm just going to stop believing this. And then tomorrow you wake up and it's gone. You know, there is certainly a process. And so I think, and that's what we teach, actually. That is what we teach.
Yeah, and that's also like, it's a process that's in line with God's design. And this is where Fulton Sheen says we got to lean really on the psychological sciences and what they're understanding in terms of how we move from these beliefs and why they're so sticky and why that's a good thing, right, by God's design. I mean, think about it this way. When somebody achieves the unitive way in the spiritual journey, a purgative, illuminative, unitive way, it is understood that it's nearly impossible for a person to commit a mortal sin once they're in that unitive way. Why? Because their body, their mind, their brain, the synapses in their body, the chemicals in their body are so habituated towards God that it would be like you're just it'd be like turning a plane that's going Mach 10 on to go the opposite direction, right? On a dime. That's what we're talking about here. And so when we've been habituated on our belief patterns in a certain way, right, it can certainly go in a vicious way as well, which, you know, devoid of God's grace, we have no hope, right, to turn away from these things. But we recognize that through the enlightenment that we're seeing with the psychological sciences that, yeah, there is a real neurological transformation that takes some time and takes some continued effort to start to reform your mind, reorient your mind towards away from a vicious belief towards something that is more virtuous. And this doesn't mean anything about our lack of it's nothing. There's nothing shameful in it, I guess is what I say.
Yeah.
It's actually part of the process. And when people can understand, it's like,
God for that.
It's taking me a while to kind of get past the sticky belief. It's just like, no, I've got a lot of synaptic connections that need pruning in my head.
And I want to add to that too. It's like not only our beliefs, like we have to consent to them, but there are practical ways to let go of beliefs. I didn't know that. I don't think most Catholics don't know that. I think like they're like, but how do I do this? Like, give me the how.
Yeah.
And this is what we teach. Actually, like I am going to plug our academy because this is what we teach deliberately. How to start to change these belief patterns.
It's a process.
Yes.
Yeah. And tell you what, folks, of course it's a process. Of course there's an ordered way to change your beliefs. God's design for the human person is very ordered. God is ordered, right? We just have to take a look and start to understand what God is showing us. All right, number 6. All right.
Your turn.
This kind of builds on what we were just talking about. I wish that someone would have asked me, and Mom, you're probably listening right now. Okay, so you said this in certain ways, so I'll give you a plug for this. But for some reason, the asking the question this way is a little bit different. I wish someone would ask me, do you want the memory of this show, this movie, this song, coming up in your prayer for the rest of your life? Okay, and what I'm getting at here, Mom used to always say, hey, Matt, garbage in, garbage out. Okay, and I would hear that and it'd be like, okay, I can kind of see how that works, but I really didn't know down to the very neurological level what was actually taking place in my brain. And we're starting to see this, and certainly when it comes to pornographic images, where there's the release of those hormones that are associated with that image that you're taking in through your senses, that burns this memory, this image into your head, into your brain that is just very vivid. And suddenly now it's just like, man, like, how often do I have some of these images coming back to me during my time of prayer, where I want nothing but just to be able to focus on Philippians 4:8, like whatever is good, whatever is noble, whatever is praiseworthy, like think on these things. But I didn't fully understand the consequences because I didn't fully understand my anthropology, how God designed my mind to burn these images into my brain. And the beautiful part of it is when I expose myself to beautiful images, things that are truly holy, things that are like great artwork and great movies and literature and things like that, that those also get burned into my mind. And when they show up in prayer, it does nothing but glorify God all the more. That's a lesson I wish I would have. I wish I would have understood that. Like it didn't just start up at garbage in, garbage out, but it was like, no, on a really practical level, these are the consequences of saying yes to indulging here.
It makes me think of one of our classes in our Catholic Coaching Foundations. We talk about all the faculties of the mind and how they interact with one another. And really how powerful the imagination is, and how the imagination and the memory are so intimately entwined with one another, and also how they lead to our emotions. And so, that's just reminds me of one of those. Yeah,
I remember reading, I was Dr. Kurt Thompson's The Anatomy of the Soul, and he talks about how important it is for people to understand, like physiological, neurologically, what is actually happening inside of our bodies. Something about that just makes it, I don't know, I just find such comfort in knowing that, like, where I might feel tempted to go down, I think it's like where I feel tempted to go down the shame path, or like I shouldn't be doing this. Like, no, this is just who I am. This is just part of being human.
Yeah.
So what do you got? Number 7, Erin.
Well, it actually goes off of what you just said, but it's like that our thoughts, like what's in our imagination, what's in our memory, what's in our cogitative power, like it all leads to our emotions. Yeah. And if we can manage our minds, we can also manage our emotions. Yeah. Yeah. And that was really helpful for me, actually. In fact, in our catechism, I'm going to read off my notes here. It says this: our emotions are natural components of the human psyche. So we feel it naturally in our body because we are body soul composite, right? We feel our emotions in our body. They are the natural components of the human psyche. What's going on up here? So like we're thinking something and therefore we are feeling it.
Angels don't have emotions.
Yes. And they don't have bodies. They form the passageway and ensure the connection between the life of the senses, a body, and the life of the mind. So they are like that theology of the body. Really, it's like you're taking what's going on in the mind, which can be opened up to grace or not, right? Which is where we receive grace, and we can experience it in our body.
Yes, the invisible made visible in and through our bodies, right? The spirit and the divine. Now your number 7. Was that your number 7?
Yes.
That was your number 7?
Yes.
Okay, my number 8. Okay. Clifton Strengths. All right, here's my plug. Guys, so Clifton Strengths it's a social science tool. I wish I would have taken this immediately after high school. I think anybody that's graduating high school should get this, get their full 34 report. If you don't know what Clifton Strengths is, it's a secular social science tool.
It's not a social science.
It's not sexual. No, it is not.
It's secular though.
It's a social science tool. You take 177 questions, and it spits out the results of where you stand in terms of these 34 signature themes or talents, area of talents that you have. And once you start to understand your area of talent, where you have these natural abilities, where you're inclined to think, feel, and act a certain way that can be applied productively, you can start to intentionally invest skills and learning into these things, knowledge into these things, so they can be grown into a strength and be a place of real contribution. What I love about this is everybody's got different areas of talent and strength. And when we can live in our areas of talent rather than just solely focusing on our weaknesses, and don't think that I'm saying don't eradicate sin or vice. Those are kind of weaknesses. And yes, that's a universal call to holiness. Everybody is called to get rid of those things. But I'm saying if you're not like a public speaker and you don't have talents that way, don't choose a path that is going to demand that talent of you, because it's not your place. God equips those people to do the requirements of their vocation, their personal vocation, which is one of my tips I'll get into in a little bit. And so learning these things, I think, my areas of talent has started to guide some of my decisions in how I choose to invest my time and my energy and my money and my resources in my life, so that my life can really be a gift. I can maximize the gift potential of my life. And man cannot know himself except through the sincere gift of self, which we read in Gaudium et Spes. And we're constantly referring back to that. So I say Clifton Strengths, that assessment, getting your full 34, I wish I would have gotten that when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And have somebody that actually can walk me through it as well. That's another thing we're doing in our academy now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, every single week we have a strengths call.
Catholic strengths call.
Yeah, we're looking at it through the lens of the church.
Right. And it just makes me think of St. Thomas Aquinas, grace builds upon nature. So the Lord's grace for you is not going to be built upon your natural weaknesses.
No.
Probably, right? It's going to build even more. Right, exactly. I mean, he comes into our poverty for sure, but still, it's like he's not going to build upon it. It's probably a steady foundation.
No, those areas of weakness have become invitations to partner and enter into a deeper relationship with others where it's areas of strength for them in the body of Christ. We've been building our Metanoia Catholic team from this whole concept, and it's amazing what we've been able to accomplish by God's grace here, but just people living in their areas of talent. It's so exciting. There's such freedom that's there. So I don't have to be good in an area where I'm weak anymore. Somebody else can fill that gap.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 9.
Yeah.
All right. And we're going to be quick, too, from this point on. A lot of mine have to do with emotions. I had a lot of misconceptions about my emotions. I had a lot of shame. I didn't know that emotions were morally neutral. Discovered that. And that's actually also in our catechism. If you want to check it out, catechism number, 1767. It says, in themselves, passions or emotions are neither good nor evil. They are morally qualified to the extent that they effectively engage reason and will. There it is again.
Took a lot of the judgment away.
Yeah, no, and you know what? That was really helpful to me because I was very ashamed of my emotions, which I think kind of goes to the next one. Can I just go right into it and combine these?
Sure, yeah.
I used to be afraid, and I used to be really ashamed of my emotions. But when I looked at them as just natural components of my human psyche, I was like, okay, first I know where they're coming from, my thoughts, and number 2. They're morally neutral. So what I can do in this moment when I'm actually experiencing this emotion is just experience it, be in it. And then maybe when I'm not so emotional, I can find out the root of it. I can actually write things down. I can journal. and do that. And I highly recommend everybody do that. Like, there is such a piece to realize if you are an emotional person like I am, there's just such a piece to realize that that there is a source of your emotion, and sometimes it's an appropriate emotion, and that's okay too. Sometimes it's antecedent, which means it has not engaged reason and you want to react to it. But you can always bring in your reason and your will in that moment.
Hey, it might be a little bit of an abrupt pause right now, but we're seeing how long this is starting to take. And so what we're going to do is we're going to stop after our 10th point here. We're going to pick up next week on the podcast. So stay tuned for numbers 11 through 20.
You're going to want to stick around. We're going to give you some practical skills too on this one. So that's why you want to go to the To Be Continued podcast for next week. Some more human formation skills that we picked up and some knowledge along the way that we are so excited to share with you.
Yeah. And by the way here, folks, we've got Coach Week coming up, Catholic Coach Week. And so I want to just take an opportunity to just plug this. This is an amazing opportunity to just try on Catholic coaching. And it's going to be a week long. We've got Monday through Friday, November 7th through 11th. Each day there's going to be some workshops followed by some group coaching. Just a great entry-level opportunity for people that are curious about Catholic coaching, maybe feeling a little bit of a tug to explore it a little bit more, or people that are already coaches, right, that just want to learn a little bit more about how to bring their coaching into the full integrity of the faith.
Yes, you should definitely come. It's going to be so fun. We have a couple people signed up, so we're just excited to meet you there.
Yeah, a growing list. We haven't even started marketing it, and I'm starting to see that there's people are just sharing this. And so I'm excited about this. It's going to be a big hit. You can register right in the show notes down here. So just click below Catholic Coach Week, reserve your seat, $19. Show up, you get the replays even if you can't make it live.
Try on Catholic coaching.
All right, we'll see you next week. Bye.